Tom Cole, Tom Cole, most probably beloved guy, respected on both sides of the aisle, appropriations chairman, said, okay, let's have a clean CR. We're not done with our appropriations. We need until November. We need 7 weeks. Let's have a clean CR. And they said, okay, just make it short. No problem. Then they came up with their ridiculous demands, stating that we could never, ever, ever, ever cut anything from discretionary spending again. We had to reauthorize PBS and NPR. And oh, by the way, illegals need to be able to receive Medicaid. And they included it. Not only did they just say it wasn't a farce, they included the language, illegal aliens receive health care, in their counter proposal. And by the way, this whole thing would cost $1.4 trillion. So, and then they realized that was ridiculous. That was going nowhere. Even the general public wasn't picking it up. So then they added this Affordable Care Act initiative, which we agree with. It needs to be dealt with. We have until December 31st. Let's do this. Now let's and then we deal with that. And yes, we will pinky swear. We will promise. We will sit down. We will begin today discussing ACA improvements, because we're just not going to give them a blank check as soon as the government opens up.
All right, guys, I hope you had a great weekend. I certainly did. Big win for Navy over the weekend. I was at the game with Secretary of War, Secretary of the Navy, Chief of Naval Operations. Great day. Navy broke the Guinness Book of World Records for number of push-ups. It was pretty cool. Like the Air Force had done it at their stadium, and I will admit I got to the game a little bit late, and I'm glad I did. And I would say to the game. Like I was there at the beginning, but prior to the game, they brought 3,000 plus people on the field to do push-ups to beat Air Force's previous record. And Secretary of Defense Hegseth and the Superintendent of the Naval Academy all got there on the ground in their service, Class A uniform, and Secretary Hegseth in his suit, and pounded them out. And that was pretty cool. Guinness Book of World Records gave that certificate to him right away. Today we got a big show for you. Congressman Dan Mueser of Pennsylvania will join us. And then after him, Congressman Marlin Stutzman of Indiana, who's also a member of the House Budget Committee, will talk to us about what's going on in Congress and where the end is in sight potentially for the end of this government shutdown. As I mentioned, we're in day 6. I will say this. I'm a little disappointed in the Senate Republicans. Not a little, I'm a lot. Why couldn't you vote over the weekend? What is this like? I'm sorry. They're actually getting paid. Military's not getting paid. Border agents not getting paid. TSA not getting paid. Senators and congressmen by the Constitution must get paid. And yet they couldn't vote over the weekend. And the first vote for the Senate was at 5:30 today. I mean, I actually think it's sad. It's pathetic to see that this is happening. And I think that House Republicans got sent away. They're not here this weekend. They're going to get 48 hours notice. So that gives you some sense of when this potentially could happen. I mean, at least if the Senate does anything, it'll take another 48 hours to get back. I mean, honestly, they should be sitting there doing their work, passing appropriations bills, trying to jam the Democrats voting over and over again. And this does not look good on them. But we'll break that down with both Congressman Mueser and Congressman Stutzman. Big deal over the weekend. And I'll see if I'll talk to both of the members about this deal, peace deal between Hamas and Israel. This is historic. I mean, it is unbelievable. President Trump had, outlined that 20-point plan. Hamas didn't take it completely, but they're willing to negotiate and get it done. Immediately agreeing to release the hostages. This is a big deal. And the Nobel Peace Prize gets announced on Friday. So just keep your eye out for that. But that would be a disaster if this guy now 8 wars after having solved 8 wars doesn't get it. I mean, that tells you how much TDS those guys have. And over the weekend, the president celebrating the Navy's 250th birthday. I'll try to get that up in a little bit. But I want to tell you about one issue that's not getting a ton of national attention, except here in Virginia. The Democrat candidate for Attorney General, his name is Jay Jones. Texts came out from him. He was texting a Republican legislator in 2022. And the texts say that he wants, if he had 2 bullets and there were 3 people, Hitler, Pol Pot, and Todd Gilbert. Now, Todd Gilbert was the Republican Speaker of the House in Virginia. He said, I'd put both bullets in Todd Gilbert and then I'd go after his family. You heard me on that, right? If he had 2 bullets and it was Hitler, Pol Pot, and Todd Gilbert, he'd shoot Todd Gilbert twice. And it was pretty sad. He says Gilbert gets 2 to the head. Only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy. Kind of sad, isn't it? I mean, that's what Todd Gilbert, that's what Jay Jones, who wants to be Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Virginia, said. And here's the worst part about this, though. And this is where I think we need to understand, this whole both sidesism that I spoke about, that the media and the Democrats wanted to talk about for the longest time. There is no both sides. We've talked about this. And I want to show you what he said. Because Jay Jones, when confronted with these texts, says this: like all people, I sent text messages that I regret, and I believe that violent rhetoric has no place in politics. No, all people don't send texts that want to assassinate their political opponents. All people don't do that, Jay. And then he says, this is where it gets even better. Let's be clear about what's happening in the Attorney General race right now. Jason Miyares, who's the Republican incumbent Attorney General here in Virginia, is dropping smears through Trump-controlled media organization. Smears. He's not smearing him. He's releasing the texts that you sent, you dummy. And Abigail Spanberger, who is a former Democratic congresswoman, who is the lead Democrat, sort of said, like, I called on him to apologize. This is insane. Weeks after Charlie Kirk gets assassinated and them talking about both sides, they are squirmish. I mean, it's a bad text. It's not a bad text. You guys wanted to kill somebody. And Portland ICE were attacked this weekend, and not one Dem said a damn thing. Not one Sunday show brought it up until Mark Short made it a point on Meet the Press. Kristen Welker was just going to gloss over it. All the Sunday shows. The both sidesism is a joke. They promote and cover up violence on their side. It's a fact. And I'm telling you, it's unbelievable, because a group down in Virginia called Blue Virginia, it's a bunch of Democrats down there, put out a statement that said this: we reaffirm its full support of Jay Jones for Attorney General and call on all Virginians to line up behind him, that he will serve with integrity and accountability. Recent press may have spotlighted past mistakes. Past mistakes? It wasn't a joke. The guy said, I want to kill the Speaker of the House in Virginia. Put 2 bullets in his head and attack his family. And then, as I mentioned, in Chicago, ICE was under attack. And here's the kicker. Federal agents were in trouble. They go out, they get surrounded, some woman's coming at them. And you know what the police in Chicago did? The chief of patrol in Chicago says no units will respond to this as related from and blah, blah, blah. Caller 1 of approximately 30 armed patrol agents, ICE, who are being surrounded by a large. They wouldn't support them. They wouldn't protect them. Go at them. We don't like ICE, so attack them. Not one Democrat has said a damn thing. You could disagree with ICE. They're doing their jobs. They're federal employees. They're federal agents. And no one in the media is asking them about it. Nope. We're not even going to ask. Don't ever let me hear both sides again without literally blowing my mind. This is insane. These guys are sitting here. There's a candidate out there saying that he wants to assassinate someone, and they are silent and squirmish and weaselly. And the same goes for ICE, and they get nothing. They get away with it. Oh, the rhetoric needs to come down. Give me a break. Give me a break. I get it. You weasels hate getting called out on your hypocrisy and on your policies and on your words and actions that are leading to this. We've got to keep our foot on the pedal, folks. And I'm telling you, by the way, I will tell you this again. I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. In New Jersey, Jack Ciattarelli will be the next governor. In Virginia, John Reed, the lieutenant governor candidate, will win. Jason Miyares will win. And I still think that Winsome Sears can pull this off. But can you imagine if the narrative goes from Dems about to sweep everything to Republicans crush it on election night? I mean, granted, we won't win Mondami, but I'm just telling you. Anyway, I don't mean to digress, but I did. A big week coming up. Eric Trump tomorrow, Robert Cahaley on Friday, amazing panel on Thursday. But I'm just telling you guys, we got a lot to watch for this government shutdown, but we're days away. The House, as I said, Speaker Johnson spoke this morning, but he sent his members home over the weekend. He's the guy hanging out here. I don't see how this thing fixes, because right now they got to peel off more and more senators. They got 5 more to go. So big week ahead. And by the way, if you didn't see the rant this weekend, I'll just play a snippet for you. It was so fun. Weeks in the making of doing this. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump responding to her about her new book and the government shutdown. I thought it was hysterical. It's on the YouTube page if you want to go see it. And as I said, we always hit subscribe and in the notification buttons, because we drop these things on Saturday. Some of them are funny, some of them are serious. We have fun over the weekend every time. So take a look at this. And then we'll get into it with Congressman Dan Mueser of Pennsylvania and then Congressman Marlin Sussman of Indiana.
We will see. Right now, my focus is, just really on the book. Okay.
Okay. Mr. President, you've got a 2028 hat on. You want to run again?
Well, we're looking very closely at it. We love the Constitution, and there's some people who say it's not constitutional, but I want you to know I got along very well with the highly respected James Madison, tremendous guy. I also got along well with Ben Franklin. I called him Brilliant Ben. We discovered electricity together. I grounded him when the lightning struck the kite. I grabbed his hand and I saved him.
All right, before I bring in Congressman Dan Mueser, I got to tell you, last week we saw those 2 Delta planes collide in New York. Obviously, air traffic control is outdated, decades old. It needs to get upgraded. It's not just the safety factors, but it's cancellations and delays. Luckily, President Trump and the big, beautiful bill got billions set aside so that Sean Duffy and the Transportation Department can upgrade air traffic control. Luckily, we have a company, and the company is called Peraton, that has 3 things we need to modernize our air traffic control, our ATC. The people, the technology, and the innovation. They proudly represent thousands of Americans doing their job every day in the national security space, in the defense space. They work with NASA, they work with the Department of Defense, all sorts of national security issues. And this company could give us the upgrade that we need for our air traffic control, make it safer, more reliable, more dependable, safer. That's what we need. Go to Peraton, Peraton.com/ATC. That stands for air traffic control. Peraton.com/ATC to learn more about the company and what they can do, because the future of air traffic control is here. All right, guys, before I bring in Dan Mueser, I've talked to doctors before and hear the same advice, Sean. Oh, you should eat slower, walk after meals, avoid processed foods. And I've been doing a lot, if not all of that stuff. But I still don't feel entirely balanced, which is why when I discovered a colostrum, which is what they call nature's gold. It's the first milk that babies get. It's packed with protein, growth factors, peptides that support immunity, reduce inflammation, and help your gut lining and reduce bloating. That's all stuff, you know what I'm talking about? You can eat healthier and still feel like you're bloated, whatever. Cowboy colostrum offers the highest quality of bovine colostrum in the U.S. It's sourced from the first milking of 100% grass-fed American cows. It's whole, it's full fat, never over-processed, so you get the maximum amount of nutrients. And for a limited time, my listeners get up to 25% their entire order at Cowboy Colostrum. So if you go to cowboycolostrum.com/Sean, S-E-A-N, Cowboy Colostrum, that's COLOSTRUM, cowboycolostrum.com/Sean, and use code Sean. You get 25% off. After your purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about it. Make sure you say the Sean Spicer Show, because that's important. So go to cowboycolostrum.com/Sean, code word Sean for 25% off. All right. It is my pleasure to bring in the congressman from Pennsylvania, a former very important businessman, hopefully can break down a lot of this budget issue with us, Congressman Dan Mueser. Congressman Mueser, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Sean, it's great to be with you.
Yeah, you're a businessman, built a really successful company. I got to imagine that when you look at the mess that we're in right now, you're thinking to yourself, this would never fly in the business world.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's a few sayings in the business world that I agree with and I wish was utilized more in government. And President Trump, fortunately, brings it as often, as effective as he can. And boy, you sure did when you were there. And that's, you know what, check your ego out the door. Results aren't the best thing, they're the only thing. And you know what else? Don't confuse activity with accomplishment. Unfortunately, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer are playing ideological games, and that's the same thing as an ego. They're playing ideological games. They're trying to. This thing is purely political. They're trying to, cater to their base, and meanwhile, they're strongly hurting most of America's taxpayers and workers.
All right. So just to make sure that everybody is level set as to what we're dealing with, right? The government stops funding on September 30th because we haven't passed any appropriations bills. The House, led by you guys, asked for a 7-week extension at current levels. No more spending, anything, no new policy, nothing. The Democrats said we want to address healthcare issues right now. In other words, inject policy into this discussion. Yeah. I want to play for you in the audience, though, what Hakeem Jeffries is, I want to show you guys how they've handled this in the past. Take a look at the clip when he was confronted about this on Meet the Press.
But let me ask you, because you say this is a Republican shutdown, but it's Democratic senators who are withholding their votes on what is called a clean resolution. That means no strings attached, which is something, quite frankly, Leader, that you and other Democrats have advocated for in the past. Take a look.
You do not use the threat of shutting down government to try to advance your policy agenda.
First thing that the House has to do is pass a clean 6-week CR.
A continuing resolution that is at the fiscal year 2023 levels is the only way forward.
Okay, so Congressman, you saw it there. All of their leaders, obviously Harry Reid is no longer with us, but that's not the point here. They all seemingly in the past were very clear that that's the only way forward, to do exactly what you guys are doing. So how do we further expose the level of hypocrisy that exists right now?
Well, their attempt is smoke and mirrors, and we are messaging as hard as we can. We're doing media hits. We're doing local. We're sending out social media to my staff this morning, going through the facts and the truth specifically. It was great that Meet the Press actually called him out. The other day, Chris Cuomo, of all people, said what the Democrats are telling you is simply not true. And he offered respect for Hakeem, but in this case, he just finds him to be a complete hypocrite. Like anybody who truly looks at this with a reasonably open mind, look, just as you said, we have a clean CR. They voted for it under Biden administration 13 times. We allowed it to happen. Not everybody in the Republican Party, but many of us. We didn't want to shut down the government. We're pretty much in the same situation here. Tom Cole, Tom Cole, most probably beloved guy, respected on both sides of the aisle, appropriations chairman, said, okay, let's have a clean CR. We're not done with our appropriations. We need until November. We need 7 weeks. Let's have a clean CR. And they said, okay, just make it short. No problem. Then they came up with their ridiculous demands, stating that we could never, ever, ever, ever cut anything from discretionary spending again. We had to reauthorize PBS and NPR. And, oh, by the way, illegals need to be able to receive Medicaid. And they included it. Not only did they just say it, it wasn't a farce. They included the language, illegal aliens receive health care, in their counter proposal. And by the way, this whole thing would cost $1.4 trillion. So, and then they realized that was ridiculous. That was going nowhere. Even the general public wasn't picking it up. So then they added this Affordable Care Act initiative, which we agree with. It needs to be dealt with. We have until December 31st. Let's do this. Now let's and then we deal with that. And yes, we will pinky swear. We will promise. We will sit down. We will begin today discussing ACA improvements, because we're just not going to give them a blank check as soon as the government opens up.
Well, Congressman, I don't mean to call you out for this, but Democrat Senator Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire went on Fox News and made it very clear that no one is saying what you're saying. Take a listen to her.
I haven't heard anybody in my party saying that illegal immigrants should get access to the health insurance marketplace.
I'm so glad you said that. Actually, I have some tape of your Democratic Party members saying this on the debate stage. So they've all said it. Let's play the clip.
A lot of you have been talking tonight about these government health care plans that you've proposed in one form or another. This is a show of hands question, and hold them up for a moment so people can see. Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants. Okay.
Senator, that's literally every member of your party, from moderate to more progressive, that have said that in the past.
So not only that, but your colleague Maxine Waters was asked by a reporter the other day, and she said we shouldn't be, dividing people by citizens and non-citizens. I mean, in other words, it's all code word. But the bottom line is, because they might say, well, it's not an illegal, it's an undocumented person. But the bottom line is, they want to give health care to people who aren't citizens.
Absolutely. And they're consistent in it, and it is happening. And by the way, part of our savings is removing 1.3, and this is just an estimate. It's probably a lot more, 1.3 illegals. We're asking the states to properly audit and vet their Medicaid rolls. That's all that's being asked. And our estimate, the savings that we're predicting, is our estimates. And it's 1.3 million illegals that are currently receiving Medicaid benefits. And there's a bunch that are simply ineligible, and then the the able-bodied that should be have some sort of requirements for work. Common sense things that are included in. And they're telling us that we're trying to gut the Medicaid system. You know who's gutted it? The Obamacare provisions escalated hundreds of billions higher than they thought it would. And they issued during the rescue plan, and this is what they want to keep permanent, temporary provisions for people over $500,000, $600,000 receiving subsidies for the ACA. And then it did insult to injury. The payments are going to insurance companies. So over 1/3 of the $250 billion extra that came in the rescue plan is going to insurance companies that are not providing any healthcare services. Thank you, Democrat Party, Democrat leadership. You people can't manage yourself, out of a paper bag, as the saying goes.
So I don't see, the only way I see forward is that if there's a deal on timing, right? Which is the Democrats say, fine, we'll give you 4 weeks, but you have to agree to a vote on ACA. Do you see any other scenario in which to break this logjam? Like any other, I don't see a deal where Republicans agree to this ACA stuff without sort of, you reopen the government, maybe it's not 7 weeks, maybe it's 5, whatever. And then we agree to have that conversation. Is that a fair analysis?
It is. It's fair. But you know what, Sean, they don't think like we think. They're looking at they're looking at the polls, and the polls are greatly in our favor right now. That's why they are blitzing every media outlet they can possibly blitz. That's why Hakeem just recently offered a challenge on the House floor to Mike Johnson so he could stand up there and pontificate on things that simply are not true. And he can show everybody how well he emulates former President Barack Obama and just state things that he thinks are catchy. But how about we do this instead, Hakeem? How about we open the government, and then we sit down and we can have the cameras there, and we actually go to work, not give speeches, not talk, not throw phrases out there and all kinds of alliterations that make you look so brilliant. Okay, let's actually do something rather than say something. Let's try that.
So let's just say hypothetically that this scenario plays out. We open the government back out. You say that we have to have changes. That's a Republican commitment, right? We're not just going to extend the ACA, the affordable healthcare subsidies, because of everything that happened during COVID, right? We need to reform this. Fair?
Yeah. And things that the American public, if they knew, as I said, the 1/3 going for just insurance companies for services they're not rendering, and those over 500K, that was an income receiving ACA subsidies, which have driven the cost super high. And again, they were done during COVID. Okay, it was like everything was allowed during COVID, but even the Democrats included it as a permanent, as a temporary resolution. Now they want to make it permanent.
Yeah. This Friday, the Nobel Peace Prize will be announced. This week, the president seemingly notched his 8th big win, ending a war. Secretary Marco Rubio was out kind of talking about the magnitude of it. Take a listen to what he said on the Sunday shows.
We're not dealing with a political movement. We are dealing with killers and savages and terrorists. That's who we're dealing with. That said, what gives you hope here is that at least there now is a framework for how all this can come to an end and those hostages can be released. What gives you hope here is the fact that for the first time in this entire endeavor, you have the United Arab Emirates, you have Qatar, you have Saudi Arabia, you have Turkey, you have Egypt, you have Jordan, you have Indonesia, you have all these countries, the European countries, all lined up behind a plan and putting a tremendous amount of pressure to make it happen. And President Trump's the one that put that together. He put together this coalition pushing in the same direction with us to try to get this, not just the hostages released, but this thing resolved. So I understand the hope and the dread because many of these hostage families have been living this for over 2 years, but they have seen other efforts in the past fail. They have seen efforts to release hostages that didn't include their loved ones. So we understand that, we do. And that's why everyone from the highest levels of our administration are so committed to getting this done. That's why even as I speak to you now, talks are ongoing between the mediators to create the conditions and the logistics so we can get those hostages out ASAP.
So, Congressman Meuser, how hopeful are you that this thing actually comes to fruition?
Well, I'm quite hopeful. And boy, oh boy, is Marco doing such a great job. I know when you were in the Trump White House, you dealt with him quite a bit when he was in the Senate. And you also saw firsthand, and you were part of the team, about getting things done. You know, President Trump is really the party of what works. We do what works. I don't know if that's conservative. It's certainly not liberal, but we do what works in the short term and particularly in the long term. And the president has stated this. He said he was going to keep working at it, bringing these Middle East parties together. He brought together Saudi Arabia. He's bringing Egypt into this. None of them were part of it before. Of course, Israel has made concessions. Qatar, you know the folks at Qatar. Look, they do their best to actually be part of the solution and not be part of the problem. And that's what I believe anyway. There's some controversy there, but they want to be part of the solution. But it's all led because of President Trump and now Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. And I'm very hopeful. I think this is Gaza's last chance. I'm not going to say Hamas's last chance because I don't think Hamas deserves a last chance. But if they care at all about those within their communities, within their nation, within the Gaza Strip, of course, they will release the hostages and they will plead for peace and mercy.
You know, when you're at home, I've never thought foreign policy was a big deal, like in terms of what people is on the top of mind of people. Maybe some people it is. When you're in Pennsylvania, as you are now, do people bring this up? I mean, like, what's the top of mind issue right now for people in Pennsylvania when you go around?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, certainly some people ask and they just said, oh, boy, this has been going on for decades. I mean, what are you going to do? They're kind of just accustomed to Middle East issues. And they're very grateful. Actually, we got natural gas and energy in Pennsylvania, so they're grateful to the president leaning in on domestic energy so these crises don't cause a recession. Remember the day when Middle Eastern conflicts would basically cause a recession? Thanks to liberal policies. But it's not really. It's really the economy. It is very much the president's plan related to strengthen our economy. There are questions about the tariffs, but they get it. People in my district absolutely get it. There's, some that have more questions than others. But look, world peace is very, very significant, right? They are seeing the death tolls on a weekly basis, both in Israel and in Gaza. Certainly the Jewish community, but not just them. Those who are, and that's the vast majority, I think, that are positive about siding with Israel under the circumstances. But it's not a top of mind. But they love the fact that the president is providing worldwide leadership. They know how important that is, and that resounds from Ukraine to Russia to China to Japan.
Okay. Congressman Dan Meuser of Pennsylvania, thanks for being with us. Really appreciate your time today.
Hey, Sean, you're the best. Anytime I'll be on. Boy, oh boy, you have a great show. Enjoy listening to you, and just thanks for the opportunity.
You bet. All right, great conversation with Congressman Meuser. And now I want to bring in Congressman Marlin Stutzman of Indiana, who sits on that House Budget Committee. What are we doing to get the ball really rolling? Where's the process screwed up? How do we fix this going forward so we don't keep doing this? I want to get Congressman Marlin Stutzman's input on this. Before I do, though, you guys know this. Every night before I go to bed, and last night was no exception, I stayed up. It was killer because I took my Beam and then the Patriots were played. That's like I was fighting the whole time. But I love this Beam Dream Powder. This is like, look at, there's 3 of these bags. I'm about to finish another one upstairs of the brownie one. These are the cinnamon cocoa. Unbelievable. But if you are someone who has trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, I'm telling you, everything that you're trying to accomplish right now comes down to whether or not you get a solid night's sleep. If you're trying to get healthy, if you're trying to improve your sharpness, if you don't get a good night's sleep, none of it matters. And I have changed everything about my routine by adding a scoop of Beam Dream Powder every night before I go to bed. I take 1 scoop, put it in some water. Some people like the milk. Some people drink it just cold. I don't care. I've done both, but I put it in the microwave for 30 seconds. It's got reishi, apigenin, L-theanine, magnesium, melatonin. It's amazing. Literally last week, I was in the middle of speaking with a group. They were talking about how they take, I think it was like Tylenol PM every night, which is not a real healthy thing to be doing. Beam's Dream Powder, 100% natural. That's the thing I love about it. It's 100% natural. 30 minutes after my head hits, or I take it, my head hits the pillow, I'm out. I sleep through the night, no waking up in the middle of the night. And I feel when I wake up, completely refreshed, ready to go. You guys make Beam's Dream Powder part of your nightly routine as well. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer, shopbeam.com/Spicer, and use code word Spicer for up to 40% off. I'm telling you, any of the flavors are great. I'm a big fan of the cocoa, cinnamon, but the brownie and the peppermint are amazing as well. Shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code Spicer for 40% off. All right, without further ado, the Congressman from Indiana, Marlin Stutzman. Congressman, good to see you. So you're back at home in Indiana. Speaker sent everybody home. What do you think of that tactic?
Well, I think it's the right tactic, Sean. First of all, great to be with you and good to see you again. As I talk to constituents in my hometown and across the district, people are like, first of all, some, they don't even recognize that the government's shut down because they're not paying attention to the news. But also those that are, they're like, you know what? Support President Trump. This is an opportunity for him to cut down the size of the federal government, support President Trump. And, Democrats are just playing games here. And thank you for doing your job in the House and, stick to your guns.
I mean, it seems like you guys really don't have anything to do in the sense that you've passed your bill, it's in the Senate, and now you kind of wait. But I guess the question I have for you is, couldn't you at least be trying to jam some of these appropriations bills over? So whether it's military or construction or veterans, you kind of put the Senate on notice. Hey, take that off the table. The government shuts down, but we'll take, veterans off the table. We'll take, of the 12 bills, we'll just start taking some off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely could. But I think that, Speaker Mike Johnson and as President Trump and Leader Thune talk through this, I think that they're looking at it from the perspective that, Democrats aren't going to help on any of this as of right now. But there are 3 Democrats that have been voting with Republicans in the Senate to get to that cloture vote. So at the end of the day, you need 6 or 7 Democrats to vote for the bill in the Senate. Honestly, Sean, I think this is all politics. I think once Democrats feel like they may, win the election in Virginia, once they've got the Northern Virginia Democrats that are mostly federal government employees riled up enough and blame Trump, they'll probably agree to the CR and then we'll push it out to November 15th. We could definitely be passing the appropriations bills, but I think it also, we need the American people to understand who's holding things up in Washington, and that's Chuck Schumer and the Democrats.
Yeah. Well, by the way, I'll just tell you, I think Jay Jones, the lieutenant governor nominee, I mentioned this earlier in the show, has maybe tampened down a little of their excitement about the November election. And we're 30 days out today in Virginia from our election. And I'll tell you, I haven't felt more excited. I mean, I was a little worried, but Jay Jones pulled what I like to call a Terry McAuliffe. You remember Terry McAuliffe? Oh, yeah. Classically stepped in it and said parents shouldn't be involved in education. It was like a huge political gift. And then Jay Jones talking about assassinating his opponents. I mean, these guys have bungled this thing. So I just want to be clear. I don't know. Their tactics might be a little off now. Let me just ask you though about you sit on the budget committee. I was actually the budget committee spokesman for 3 years, so a little familiar with the committee. The question I have for you is the process broken? Like everybody knows when the end of the fiscal year is, and yet we kind of do this like, oh my gosh, we're shocked that we haven't done anything every September 30th. Do we need to look at the process and redo it?
Well, I think, Sean, the process is broken in the Senate. I mean, if I were, king for the day, I would say that the budget does not need a cloture vote in the Senate. I mean, we can pass a budget out of the House with 50+1 votes to move the budget out of the House, but it's that 60 vote cloture vote that's in the Senate that keeps us from passing this CR. And so I think that's what's broken. I think if you would just simply say, if the Senate would say on budgetary matters, we're going to not require the filibuster vote, the cloture vote, and they can keep it for everything else if that's what they want to do, then that way the majority party, whether it's Republican or Democrat, can pass a budget and we're not stuck with these CRs and these omnibus bills. And then that way the majority party is also responsible to the American people come the next election. If the American people don't like the budget, if they don't like the spending priorities that each party has made, then they can vote that particular party out of office. But that's the tweak that I think that needs to be made. I'm sure that, we got others that we could talk about as well. I'm not a big fan of Congressional Budget Office scoring and things like that. But I think that 60 vote cloture vote is the biggest hurdle for getting a budget passed.
So speaking of the 60 vote cloture, right? So why not urge the Senate to do that right now? Say, great, change the rules, pass with the budget, keep it open with 50, and let's go. I mean, to some degree, that's the dirty little secret right now. They could change the rules, they could vote with a majority, and they could just pass to keep the government open, and then we get what we want.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not in those Senate conversations, and why the senators are afraid to do that. I mean, I always hear, well, just remember, they're going to have the majority someday and then they're going to stick it down our throats. Well, at the same time, the American people, we're the ones suffering from this cloture vote because look what's happened over time. I mean, Obamacare was passed through under reconciliation. A lot of these, the big policy positions are passed under reconciliation that doesn't need the cloture vote anyway. So, that's when you only need 51 votes to pass it in the Senate. And these are the big policy decisions that are being passed there. So I wish that they would at least, they've done that a little bit on some of the judges, but they're always afraid that, well, we're set precedent here, then we're going to eventually get it jammed down our throats when Democrats are in charge. I tell you what, Democrats will do it. I mean, they've done it. And so that's why we need to take the opportunity to do it now.
I mean, don't you think that's the thing? We always get worried that, oh my gosh, they're going to do it. They do it. They're the ones who started it. And then every time we get worried about what the precedent is going to start, but they do it all the time. They're the ones who, Harry Reid went nuclear, as they like to refer to it, early on. They're the ones who started these partisan fights on judges with Judge Bork back in the 80s. They're the ones who do it. And then we get all like into the fetal position to go, oh my gosh, precedent. And what's going to happen if they get back in charge? And my answer is, what do you think they're going to do? These are the same guys who already talk about, like in a campaign commitment, to get rid of the filibuster. You think they're going to maintain it?
Well, Sean, we're dealing with the same thing in Indiana right now with the state legislature and redistricting. I'm a big supporter of President Trump and the fact that we need to redistrict here in Indiana. And I was telling a group of Republicans the other day, it's like, is it something that we want to do? I understand that this isn't the normal time, but guess what? Democrats have already redistricted. They've already done it. They've already maximized their districts out in Illinois, California, New York. I mean, there's a couple more they could maybe get here and there, but we play by the rules. They don't. They want the levers of power at any cost, and that's what they will do. And it reminds me a little bit of the old British military back during the Revolutionary War. They fought by the rules of war, marching in a line. And the Patriots, they're like, well, we can't win this way, so we're going to go fight a different way, and they won. Well, we need to fight the same way. And so when it comes to redistricting, the cloture vote, Republicans need to stand and say, look, this is what's good for the American people and to get our debt and deficit down. And also, we cannot let, if they're going to play these games with redistricting, we need to fight fire with fire and do the same thing.
I love the analogy. I never heard anybody bring that up before, but you're so right. Like, our country's founded on being asymmetrical. We're like, hey, we can't win this way, but we can win that way, so let's do it. And now suddenly we're reverting back to a bunch of British subjects and being like, the rules in the Robert's Rules of Order continue to say, why not be who we are? And be like, let's play a little asymmetrical warfare here and do what we have to do. So you brought it up. Tell me, where do things stand with Indiana, and how I mean, are you going to get it done? And if so, how many seats do we net?
Well, we have to do it, Sean. I mean, I tell my friends, I mean, I served in the state house back during the 2002 to 2010. I've got a lot of friends there. And I'm trying to explain to them how different it is in Washington and, the House of Representatives and the Senate that it is in Indiana. When we have super majorities in Indiana, we used to not back in the 2000s. And I think it's going to get done, but I know I've heard the state Senate is dragging their feet a little bit. Again, I tell them, I'm like, look at it from the perspective of the census. Indiana's not a sanctuary state. We don't just say, hey, illegals, non-citizens, come to Indiana, we'll take care of you. There's a couple cities that try it, but we're not like California. We're not like Illinois. Massachusetts, for example, they're 9-0. We are about the same size as Massachusetts, and we have 9 congressional seats, and we're 7-2, and one of those seats is a swing seat. I mean, it could have gone Republican. I think if the candidate would have run again this last time with Trump, I think we could have won that. It's only a D+2, and so we could go 9-0 in Indiana. I mean, a kindergarten class could draw the maps in Indiana, and we would go 9-0, and so. It's just, to me, it's a no-brainer. But I understand the thought and want to be thoughtful here by the Senate and the House here in Indiana. But I'll tell you, the precedent, if we don't do it when Ohio does it, Texas and other states do it, Indiana doesn't look like the team player. And that's what I think is really important for us to remember, that we've got to stick together as a party and make sure that we support Trump and the Republican Party.
All right, so I'll use my kindergarten math. If you have a supermajority and a Republican governor, which you do,
yes.
Then then that 2 + 2 = 4. Why? Like, where's the holdup? Are these guys just being skittish? Is it that some Republicans aren't committed enough? Like, what am I missing here?
It breaks the precedent. Because
are you kidding me? That's
no.
what this is.
Absolutely, Sean. That's the precedent. It changes the precedent because we always do redistricting after the census.
All right, so a bunch of your legislators were out here. I actually tangentially met with a couple of them. And what I had heard coming out of that White House meeting from some of the folks was that President Trump and the team did a good job of getting one or two of them over the finish line. So give me a ballpark here. Are we at 95% likely going to do this? Is there a deadline that we're going to miss? Like, where are we in this process, timeline and number-wise?
Well, Governor Braun is very supportive of doing it. And, it's up to him to call the session, whether it's a special session or they somehow tie it into the typical, the scheduled legislative session. I'm hearing most House members are there. Again, with super majorities, it's not like we have to have every right. Republican, even though I think it'd be good if every Republican did, because here's the thing, Sean, you remember back in the days, I mean, it used to be tight in Indiana, but when Obama and Hillary came to Indiana during the 2008 campaign in a primary that was contested, that's when all the Reagan Democrats, all the Blue Dog Democrats heard from Hillary and Obama, like, this is the new Democrat Party. And I'm explaining to them, this is not grandma's old Democrat Party anymore. This is a very different party. We just need, it would be good if everybody supported it as Republicans because it'd be the right thing to do. But second of all, we just need to get some of the senators, past the precedent and say, look, here's another precedent that we need to take into consideration, Sean, is 100,000 Illinoisans have moved into Indiana since the census was taken because of bad policies in Illinois. And I don't think most of them are bringing their politics along. So that's another reason that we need to redistrict, to make sure that Hoosiers have a fair representation in Washington, because these other states are sanctuary states. They have more non-citizen illegals in their states that were counted in the census that Indiana didn't have. And a lot of other states are the same way. So that's why I think this is important to redistrict, because there's an imbalance here in Washington that conservative states have fewer seats compared to the liberal states.
If this is done at a level higher than kindergarten, will you guys go for the full 9-0, or will it be like some mealy mouth 8-1?
I mean, there's no reason. If you're going to do it, I mean, go 9-0, and it could be done. And I would say that, Andre Carson, who's the Democrat in Indianapolis, he's the one that has a protected seat of anybody, because they've just drawn a district around Indianapolis for him. And so think about all those folks in Indianapolis that, would like to have a more balanced representative in Washington. And again, I mean, this is we draw the maps. We have the super majorities. This is our responsibility, and we should do it.
Ohio missed a deadline last week. Is there a deadline for Indiana? I know, because obviously even you have to run. You need to know who your constituents are. So what's the timeline look like here?
Well, we start filing after the first of the year, so January 4th, 5th, somewhere in there. And I don't know the exact rules on that, if the districts have to be set by then, or if they could even change them at the beginning of January. I think that, they're looking at all of that. We do have a day, or a week actually, that we have Organization Day in November, right before Thanksgiving. If it were up to me, I would say wrap it around that Organization Day in November, and have all of the conversations. They're happening now, and I think there's momentum. More people are understanding why, and that the Democrats have already done this. I mean, if you look at the Illinois map, there's some sort of snake and dragon weaving up through. They have gerrymandered their districts so badly. And you look at Indiana's, and ours are nice and square. And it's like, we're the good kid, and they're the bad kids. And but guess what? Oftentimes the bad kid wins on the playground, because they play by different rules.
Yeah, well, we got to get the kindergartners to start drawing a little bit more creatively. Congressman Marlin Stutzman, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you being with us.
You bet. Thanks, Sean. Great to be with you.
All right, really enjoyed that conversation. We got a big week lined up. As I mentioned, Eric Trump is going to be here tomorrow. He's got a great new book out called Under Siege, where he talks about all the things that his family has dealt with since his father came down that golden escalator. Later in the week, Robert Cahaly, pollster extraordinaire. But before I do that, yesterday, as I mentioned, I was at the Air Force game Saturday with Secretary of War, Secretary of the Navy, the Chief of Naval Operations, watching them beat Air Force. A little closer than I wanted, I'll admit that. But we got a win. And then the Patriots won last night. I mean, win. And so it was a big week of winning for me. And they beat Army in December, second weekend. That gets them back the Commanders-in-Chief trophy, which is cool, because you get to go to the White House and do all that stuff. But the president then went on yesterday. He was in Norfolk, world's largest Navy base, paying tribute to the Navy on its 250th birthday. He went out and did all this really cool stuff on the ship. And then they came in pierside and paid tribute to the sailors and the sacrifices that the Navy has made over the last 250 years. Here's a clip of him. Take a listen.
Every sailor, aviator, submariner, and shipmate in the Navy inherits a tradition of excellence and daring, power and glory unmatched in the long saga of mankind's voyage on the sea. From that first ship, the schooner Hannah, to the awesome sight of a modern carrier battle group underway, the U.S. Navy has always been the iron will of a proud and mighty nation, pushing forward through the currents and over those big, beautiful waves, through the spray of raging combat and the fog of naval war. America's sailors have proven time and again that our Navy does just the best job there is. Anything having to do with sailing the oceans, there's nobody to compete. We own the skies, we stalk the depths, and we rule the seas like nobody has ever ruled the seas.
That was pretty cool. Melania Trump, the First Lady, came out as well, got the troops fired up. Secretary of War, it was a great day for the Navy yesterday, and I'm glad the president had an opportunity. It's a bummer that it happened during a government shutdown, but nonetheless, a great day there honoring 250 years of the United States Navy, the people, the battles, some of the historical figures. The president gave an amazing speech. So glad to see that. Anyway, as I said, Eric Trump tomorrow. Thanks for spending your week with us. You can always go to SeanSpicer.com, sign up for my latest newsletter. We'll see you tomorrow back here on the Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.